Can you believe it? 2 years ago, when I graduated from college, the only bouquet I received was the one my parents brought. On top of that, I had to use my savings to take them out for a celebratory meal. But fast forward 2 years, when it was my younger brother's turn to graduate, they threw a party at a fancy restaurant. And after the celebration, they even asked me to split the bill. After witnessing their favoritism time and time again, I finally decided to walk away from my family. Some people say I did the right thing. Others say I was wrong because family members are supposed to support each other. What do you think? Listen to my story and share your thoughts with me. Hello, my name is Mark. I'm 25 years old and have worked as a financial professional for 3 years. I used to live with my parents, thinking it was expected that the family would stick together and support one another. But a year ago, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never measure up to my younger brother. In my parents' eyes, none of my efforts were ever acknowledged, while Stephen was always favored and protected. That was when I decided I needed a life of my own, a place where I no longer had to prove my worth to those who never truly appreciated it. A year ago, on the day of Stephen's graduation, I remember that morning vividly. As I sipped my coffee before heading to work, my mom called me to the living room. My dad was already sitting there while Stephen was still asleep upstairs. They told me Stephen had a graduation party that evening and I had to be there. Not an invitation, not a warm family conversation, just a command. We've already reserved a table. Be there by 600 p.m. and don't forget to bring a gift for your brother. I hesitated for a moment. Party when I graduated, did I get anything? No celebration, no gifts, not even a simple congratulations. I had to manage everything on my own, earning my degree, finding a job, and I never asked them for anything. Sensing my silence, my mom added, "You're his older brother. After all, you should at least bring something. If you don't have a gift, then don't bother coming and embarrassing the family." I let out a small, dry laugh. I see how it is. I didn't argue. I stood up, grabbed my car keys, and went to work as usual. But in my mind, a plan was already forming. If a gift were that important, would ensure it was truly unforgettable. The entire day I was busy with work, but in the back of my mind I kept thinking about the party my parents had ordered me to attend. After all, Stephen was still my brother, so I got him a special gift, a brand new MacBook worth nearly $2,000. I wanted to make the moment memorable, so I arranged for it to be delivered to the party. I pictured the scene, the delivery person walking in, handing Stephen the package in front of everyone. It would be a meaningful gesture, even though my family had never done anything like that for me. At 6:00 p.m., I left the office and drove to the Grand Oak, a high-end restaurant downtown. The moment I walked in, I immediately noticed something. The place was packed. They had invited over 50 people: Stephen's friends, distant relatives, my parents, colleagues, even people I had never seen before. The long tables were neatly arranged, every seat filled, and each guest had their place except for me. And then my parents saw me. They stepped forward, their faces showing no surprise or happiness at my arrival. My mom crossed her arms and shook her head. "Slightly, you're late. There are no seats left." I frowned, glancing around. There was still an empty seat near Stephen. I pointed at it and asked, "What about that one?" She followed my gaze, then turned back to me and said firmly, "That seat is taken. One of Stephen's friends is coming." I let out a small laugh. An hour ago, I didn't even know I was supposed to be there, yet somehow they had already assigned a seat for someone arriving later than me. Oh, so Stephen's friend gets a seat even though they're late. But I, who came earlier, don't. My dad nodded as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, but my mom had already lost interest in the discussion. She crossed her arms, her expression full of irritation. "Where's Stephen gift? Honestly, I think you should leave. You're late and you didn't even bring a present." Murmurs started spreading around the room. "He came without a gift. He's the older brother. He should have at least brought something." No gift, but still expecting to sit down and eat. I heard every word, every judgmental whisper from Stephen's friends, from distant relatives, people who had never cared about me before, but now suddenly felt entitled to criticize me. I just smiled, a smile with no warmth, no amusement, and then right at that moment, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A call from the Apple store. Delivery guy. I picked up. "Hello, I'm outside the Grand Oak. I have a delivery for a MacBook. Should I bring it in now?" I replied loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, please bring it in." The moment the delivery guy walked into the restaurant and stood beside me, every pair of eyes turned toward us. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke loud enough for the entire table to hear. "Stephen, this is your gift, a MacBook." The room erupted in murmurs. Stephen looked up, his eyes widening in shock. He stared at me, then at the package in the delivery guy's hands, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Seriously, his voice was Filled with excitement and disbelief, the people around us began to murmur in admiration. I glanced at my parents. They were beaming with pride as if they had just accomplished something great. My mother leaned in and whispered to a distant relative, "See, I told you Mark would never show up empty-handed." My father crossed his arms and nodded. Approvingly, guess we misjudged him. He knows his responsibilities after all. I looked around the room, taking in their satisfaction, the smugness, and congratulatory relief that I had done what was expected. I smirked slightly, then calmly added, "But I don't think you need it anymore." The room fell silent. Stephen froze, the smile vanishing from his face. My mother's expression stiffened, her eyes narrowing in confusion. My father raised an eyebrow, clearly trying to process what was happening. I turned to the delivery guy, my voice steady but firm. "I'm sorry, but want to cancel this order." "The delivery?" Guy blinked, momentarily caught off guard, but Quick L regained his professionalism. He nodded, pulled out his phone, and called the store the entire table sat in. Stunned silence, the murmurs from before, had disappeared, entirely replaced by thick tension in the air. The delivery? Guy hung up a minute later and looked at me politely. "The store has confirmed the cancellation. You'll be charged a 5% fee, but the remaining amount will be refunded to your account within 3 to 5 business days." I smiled lightly. "That's fine, thank you." He gave me a slight nod before turning and exiting the restaurant the moment the delivery guy walked out. The table erupted. Stephen was the first to react. He shot up from his seat, his chair screeching against the floor. "Are you insane? Are you joking? Why the hell did you cancel it?" My dad slammed his hand on the table, his face red with rage. "What the hell are you doing, Mark? Are you trying to humiliate this family in front of everyone?" My mom's mouth hung open, her expression a mix of shock and fury. "What is wrong with you? Why would you pull such a ridiculous stunt? I knew it. I knew you couldn't just be decent for once." Stephen yelled, his face flushed with anger. "You did this just to embarrass me in front of my friends, didn't you?" The murmurs from the table grew louder. Stephen's friends, distant relatives, everyone stared at me. Whispering, pointing, judging. I looked at each of them, listening to every word, but I didn't get angry. I didn't react, didn't argue. I just stayed silent. Without another word, I turned around and walked out of the restaurant. Right before leaving, I said I didn't have a seat at this table, so there was no reason for me to spend $2,000 on Stephen or on this family after leaving the party. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove straight to a familiar coffee shop, a quiet place never too crowded where no one knew me. I ordered an Americano, found a secluded corner, and sank into my seat, letting my body relax. The air was filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and soft music played by the speakers. I stared blankly at the wooden table before me, my mind empty, but the memories started flooding back within minutes like an old film, playing in slow motion. As a child, I had already realized that I was never the favored one. When I won first place in the school's math competition, my parents patted my shoulder and said, "Good job, son." But when Stephen won a bronze medal in a district soccer tournament, they threw a party, invited relatives to celebrate, and bought him a new pair of cleats by high school. The favoritism became even more apparent when I scored the highest in my class on the final exams. My parents didn't even mention it, but when even nearly failed the subject and barely passed after a retake, they took him out for a lavish dinner, saying he had worked so hard. And then came college. I never asked my parents for a single cent. He secured scholarships and worked 3 jobs simultaneously to cover tuition and living expenses. Stephen, when he got into college, my parents bought him a used car. For convenience, paid all his tuition and even gave him a monthly allowance. And I remember my graduation day perfectly. There was no party for me, no celebration, not even a simple congratulations. They only asked me one thing: "So where are you taking us out to eat?" I spent $500 on that dinner money I had scrimped and saved from my part-time jobs. I didn't want to spend it, but I told myself that family is family. Maybe they deserve it. But that dinner felt like nothing more than an ordinary meal. No one mentioned how hard I had worked. No one said they were proud of me. And then I got my first job. Before receiving my first paycheck, my parents called me to the living room. "On my first day starting this month, you'll pay $22,000 for rent and living expenses." Was stunned. $2,000? This isn't a 5-star hotel. You have a job now, so it's your responsibility to contribute. Stephen is still in school and doesn't have an income. Yet your father and I are getting older and work isn't what it used to be. You need to help support the family. My mom said it without a hint of hesitation. Without missing a beat, I told them I'd move out. I could rent a much nicer apartment with that amount of money. After a brief discussion, my parents exchanged glances and lowered the price to $1,000. I agreed, not because I was afraid to move out, but because I still believed that staying with family was the better choice despite the unfairness. I still thought they were my family, and now, after everything, I've come to a simple yet bitter realization: no matter how hard I try, they will never acknowledge me. If I stay, I'll be nothing more than an ATM, always there when they need money, but never truly valued. I have to break free from this cycle, the sooner the better, and so I started planning my exit. This time I wouldn't announce it, I wouldn't ask for permission. I wouldn't wait for anyone's approval that night. I came home at 10 p.m. later than usual. It had been a long day. I only wanted peace, but as soon as I stepped inside, I saw my parents waiting in the living room. I braced myself, expecting them to lash out about what had happened at the party, but they didn't yell. They didn't explode with anger. Instead, they apologized. My mom looked at me, her expression softer than it had been at the restaurant. Her voice was unusually gentle. "I know you weren't happy today. We should have saved a seat for you. I'm sorry." My dad nodded in agreement. "We're family. We can work through this. We don't want you to feel left out." I felt my resolve waver for the first time in a long while. Maybe had I been too harsh? Maybe they hadn't meant to treat me this way. But just as I started to let my guard down, my father, continued Stephen, was distraught that you cancel his gift. He was looking forward to it so much, and in the end, he got nothing. My dad paused, looking at me with the calm, calculated tone of someone making a reasonable request. "So instead of the MacBook, you could make it up to him another way. Dinner bill tonight was $4,600. We'll consider the matter settled if you cover half DO2 $300 as a graduation gift." I looked at him, then at my mother. So this was why they had waited up for me. They weren't genuinely sorry. They didn't care about how I felt. They just wanted another way to take my money. I laughed, but this time there was no hesitation in my voice, no one word. Firm, final. My mother's Mother's smile disappeared. My father frowned. "Mark, don't be selfish." My mom said, her voice no longer gentle. "Family helps each other. That's how it should be." "Yes," I replied, "but helping isn't the same as being used." "What are you even saying?" My father's patience began to wear thin. "You make the most money in this family. Are you saying you can't contribute a little? Do you know how hard we work to care for you?" And Stephen, I cut him off. "You didn't take care of me. I've been taking care of myself for a long time." The room grew tense, and then you wonder why you always feel so distant from this family. My mother snapped, "You're the one who keeps pulling away. You never try to connect with us. You can't even be generous with your brother." I met her gaze, unwavering. "And were you ever generous with me?" She froze. I took a step forward, my voice calm but sharp. "When I graduated with honors." "What did you do?" Silence. I continued, my words cutting through the air like a knife. "You bought me a cheap bouquet and told me to plan my celebration. Then you made me pay for dinner." My mother opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. My father sat still, his brow furrowed visibly, uncomfortable. And Stephen, I let out a dry laugh. "He had a regular graduation, and you threw him a massive party with over 50 guests. Did I have a seat at that table?" "No, but his late arriving friends. Did I get him a gift?" "Yes, but because I refused to pay for the entire dinner. Now I'm the selfish one." My father cleared his throat, searching for an excuse. "We didn't throw a party for you because we knew you were independent. You didn't need us to." Scoffed. "Right, because I took care of myself. You used it as an excuse to ignore me, and because Stephen never had to be independent, you used that to keep spoiling him." The weight of my words hung in the air. My parents had no rebuttal, but I knew it wasn't because they understood. They didn't know what else to say. I exhaled slowly. "If you're only apologizing to ask for money, then there's nothing left to discuss with that." I turned and walked straight to my room, ignoring the voices calling after me. I was too tired for this fight, but one thing was sure: I was leaving this house. I thought that after everything, things would finally settle down, that they would stop demanding things from me. But I was wrong. My parents made another request 2 days after Stephen's graduation party. This time they wanted me to give my car to Stephen. His car is old, son. He needs a newer one to apply for jobs and commute to work. I stared at them briefly, forcing myself to stay calm. Then in a slow, deliberate voice, I asked, "Are you serious?" My mom nodded without hesitation. "You started working before Stephen. You can help him out a little." My dad crossed his arms, adding, "Exactly, you're the older brother. You should support your sibling." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous. I almost couldn't believe it. This car I saved for 6 months to buy it. My voice dripped with sarcasm. I worked, budgeted every penny, and earned it. And Stephen, he's never had to save for anything, and now he gets to demand this. My dad's tone hardened. He was running out of patience. "Stephen just graduated. He doesn't have money. He needs a car to get to interviews and secure a good job. You already have a steady income. You can buy another one." Shrugged. "If he needs a car, he can drive his old one a little longer, or he can learn to save up like I did." I paused for a moment before continuing, my voice calm and steady. "But if you want him to have my car, You can buy it from me for a second. My father's face paled. Then he exploded. What did you just say? He slammed his hand on the table, making my mom flinch. You're asking us to pay to help your brother. No. I met his gaze. Without hesitation, if you want me to help, at the very least, it should be fair. Fair? My father's face turned red with fury. You want to talk about fairness? With your brother, I didn't respond. I was exhausted from this conversation before. It even began. My father shot up from his seat, pointing a finger directly at me, his voice thundering through the room. Get out of my house, silence my mother. Looked stunned. Stephen, who had been quiet the whole time, sat frozen in shock. I wasn't surprised. If anything, it felt like I was watching a play where I knew the ending. I took a deep breath and nodded. All right, then I turned and walked straight to my room without looking back. This time, I didn't need to argue. They had just decided for me. 30 minutes later, I dragged 2 suitcases downstairs. I didn't need much clothes, few personal items, important documents, only the essentials I left behind, anything that tied me to this house. Didn't want to take a single reminder of this place with me without looking back. I walked to the door. My father's voice rang behind me as my hand touched the doorknob. Let's see how you survive. Without family, I paused for a second, not because his words shook me, they didn't, but because in that moment I realized something. This is how they saw me in their eyes. I needed this family to survive. I couldn't exist without them, couldn't be happy without them, but they were wrong. I didn't say a word. I opened the door, stepped outside, and shut it behind me, closing an entire chapter of my life. I walked straight to my car, threw my suitcases into the trunk, started the engine, and drove away. I never looked back. A week later, I rented a cheap hotel room, a temporary place to stay while searching for a more permanent home. The room was small, nothing special, but at least it was mine. No more arguments, judgmental stares, or unreasonable demands. For the first time in a long while, I felt light, and then luck found me. After nearly 10 days of searching, I found the perfect apartment, 50 square m, just the right size to live comfortably, not too big, not too small. But most importantly, it was mine, a place I could truly call home. The rent was reasonable, only $500 a month. I had enough space to rest, work, and most importantly, be free. In the following days, my life finally started to feel like my own. I no longer woke up feeling weighed down. No more nagging every morning, no more people barging into my space with absurd demands. I no longer had to calculate how much of my paycheck would go to someone else. Every dollar I earned, every effort I put in was now for me. I spent time decorating my apartment and organizing my life how I wanted. I focused on my career and planned my finances, and I had time to relax for the first time in years, reading books, watching movies, and enjoying the little things I had never allowed myself to. 6 months after I left, Stephen still didn't have a job. He was still living off my parents, free from financial worries, with no pressure to be independent. I had grown used to the quiet of living alone until my mom called me one day. It was the first time she had reached out in 6 months. Her voice was softer than usual. I miss you, Mark. It's been so long since you came home. Can we meet up? I was surprised, but didn't ask any questions. I agreed. She suggested a cafe downtown, a place we had never been before. And the moment I arrived, I understood why. It wasn't just her. My father was there, and so was Stephen. Once again, I had walked into a family meeting. I hadn't been informed about. My mother smiled, acting as if this were just a casual reunion. How have you been? Work going well? Something felt off. My parents never asked about my well-being unless they wanted something. I didn't bother playing along. I looked my mother straight in the eye and said, my voice calm and direct, just get to the point. She flinched slightly, but quickly recovered. With a sigh, she spoke carefully. Can you lend us $50,000? I raised an eyebrow, still processing her words. My father cleared his throat and added, Stephen wants to open a cafe. He has a great idea, but bank loans have ridiculous interest rates. If you could lend us the money for a year, we promise to pay it back in full. Turned to Stephen. He sat there trying to look serious, but I could see the eagerness in his eyes. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. Really? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. He never earned a single dollar, but you expect me to believe he can run a side business? My mother's voice turned desperate. Stephen has grown up, Mark. He needs a chance. Can't you help him this one time? We're family. Stephen said, I'll pay it back as soon as I make a profit. This is my big opportunity, bro. I kept smiling, but in my mind, everything was clear. If I gave them this money, I would never see it again. I shook my head. No, my father immediately lost his temper. Stop being so selfish, Mark. His voice rose. All you ever think about is yourself. Are you jealous of your brother? Afraid he'll be more successful than you? I looked at him, my expression unreadable. All right, I'll do it. Their reactions were immediate. My mother's face lit up. Stephen sighed in relief. My father instantly calmed down, his tone shifting back to warmth. That's right, son. Family helps each other. But I wasn't finished. I smiled and continued. I'll lend you $50,000, no interest, but I paused, letting the weight of my words settle you. And Stephen have to sign a loan agreement. The collateral will be the house you're living in. The house becomes mine if you don't pay me back in a year. The cafe went silent. My mother's mouth hung open. My father's eyes widened in disbelief. Stephen sat, frozen. I remained seated, smiling as if we were having a pleasant conversation. Well, we're family. You believe in Stephen's success, don't you? So this shouldn't be a problem. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. He stared at me, searching for a way out, but in the end, all he could say was, I have no son like you. I wasn't surprised. Those words didn't hurt me anymore. I shrugged, stood up, grabbed my coat, and said, that's your choice. Goodbye. No one stopped me as I walked out. No one called after me, and I wasn't expecting them to. After that day, I cut all contact. No more calls, no more messages, no more guilt trips, demands, or manipulative performances. I moved forward with my life, and I have no regrets. Until a week ago, I ran into my cousin Emily. We weren't particularly close, but we kept in touch occasionally. She sighed when she saw me, shaking her head as if she didn't know where to begin. Do you know what's been happening with your family? She asked. I shrugged. Not really, but go ahead. Emily lowered her voice, her expression tinged with regret. They're in bad shape. Stevens' cafe went under after just 3 months. No customers, huge losses in the end. He had to sell it off. I wasn't surprised. I had seen it come. Stephen had never earned $1 on his own. I never managed anything. His failure was inevitable. And there's more. Emily continued. Your parents are selling the house to pay off his debts. They have no choice. They're looking for a smaller place to move into. I took a sip of my coffee, silent for a moment. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel regret. This was simply the result of their choices. My parents had chosen Stephen. They had bet everything on him, and now they were paying the price. I looked at Emily and gave a faint smile. I gave them a chance. Emily nodded but didn't say anything. Else I stood up, giving her a light pat on the shoulder. If they ask about me, tell them this: I'm doing just fine, and I'm not coming back. Even though Emily understood my side, I knew plenty of people still sided with Stephen and my parents. They believed that I should sacrifice for my brother as the older sibling. If I were earning money first, I would have an obligation to help the one who wasn't. And honestly, I agree, but only if it's a real family. A family where parents treat all their children reasonably instead of favoring one and turning the other into an ATM. A family where help comes from love, not from guilt, manipulation, or obligation. Do you agree with me? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story if it resonates with you. Thank you for reading. See you next time.